Good morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and I was always told I had a voice for radio, so today you can hear me commentating a Pokémon trading card game. More importantly, this is a game in the very first weekend where Ancient Origins is legal. And we have just rotated as well, so we are playing from XY until Ancient Origins. So if you're trying to get acquainted in a new standard format, I would say watching some of these videos is a very, very good place to start indeed. I should also note that due to time restrictions on the day these games were played as a best of one, and I should give a huge thank you to the lovely people at Athena Games, who not only allowed me to record on the day, but actually went out of their way to help me to do so. Round 2 features Worlds competitor Nick Pearce, who went 4-1-2 in day 1 of Worlds, missing day 2 by just a single point. He will be playing Manectric like we saw in the previous round, and he's going to be playing a more unusual deck, one we don't see very often, because John Riches is playing Beautifly. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so as I said, on the left we have Nicholas Pearce. He is going to be playing Manectric Regice, kind of like we saw in the previous game. And on the right we have John Riches, as the camera is just switched around there. And John is going to be playing Beautifly. I should at this point take a moment to point out how wonderful and lovely the people at Athena Games in Norwich in the UK were. Not only did they let me record, but they actually set up a table in a separate room next to a plug socket, and one of the judges even made sure that it was going at the beginning of the round and stopping at the end of the round so that I could get on with playing in the tournament. Really just over-the-top helpfulness and loveliness from those wonderful people. So some of you might be thinking, hang on a second, Beautifly? Well, how does Beautifly do? Well, it's got an ability, Miraculous Scales, which prevents all damage done by attacks from your opponent's Pokemon EX. It also happens to have free retreat, and an attack that does 80 damage for a grass and a double colourless, which you have the option of switching or making your opponent switch their active Pokemon. Kind of like Escape Rope, but only on the other person. There was a card a little while ago that did that. I want to call it Pokemon Reversal, but it wasn't. That was a flip one. I'm going to work on that. But anyway, the point, if I don't forget to mention that, if somebody remembers that card, pop it down there in the comments. Now, honestly, I don't think Nick's Manectric deck is going to struggle against Beautifly. Beautifly is a kind of card which is going to excel against entirely EX decks, which Nick is not playing. Obviously, although he doesn't seem to have a great opening hand, thank goodness for Shaman, all we have a Regice, and John starts Shaman and goes first. He gets a DCE on Shaman, as we saw in the previous game. That's so that he can Sky Return it next turn, do 30 damage, and put it back into his hand. And he manages to play a Trainer's Mail. He draws into a Shauna. Not an amazing supporter, but essentially nowadays, you play 4 Sycamore, and then you've got Shauna or Birch. It's not ideal. Depends how lucky you're feeling, I suppose. Shauna gets you 5, Birch you flip a coin, Tails you get 4, Heads you get 7. He puts a Muscle Band on Shaman. Firstly, that's going to mean he does 50 damage with Sky Return. The other cool thing it's going to do is it's going to take one card out of his deck, and that means that he's going to be able to, ever so slightly, raise his odds of hitting what he wants to hit. Now he's not going to draw into a Muscle Band, or that particular Muscle Band. Same thing with a double colourless energy. So he has actually raised his chances ever so slightly. And we see a Miltank there. So clearly he's going to be using Miltank, Beautifly, and there's going to be a Broken Vine Space coming out, which allows him to go to Beautifly in one turn. So essentially, in John's deck, I imagine anyway, the way I would play it, and I've heard other people talk about it, Beautifly is there for taking down EXs, Miltank is there for taking down non-EXs. With a Muscle Band, Miltank will do 100 damage, which unfortunately isn't enough to take down Regice, and I don't believe it's enough to take down Articuno as well. Although, spoiler alert, Nick is a very good friend of mine, somebody with whom I was talking to a lot at the tournament, and I can confirm that in this particular list, there is no Articuno in Nick's list, it's just Regice. But Regice does 70 damage, and it's not really going to struggle. That Miltank, if it ever comes out, is going to be taken down by... Oh, and there's a Hooper from Nick to help himself get set up. That Regice can easily take down the Beautifly in 2 hits, and the Beautifly will similarly be 2-hitting Regice, and if Nick is forced to switch his active Pokemon, he sticks up a Mega Manectric, it's got free retreat. So it's not really a huge downside. So the only thing that can really happen here is John can stick up a Beautifly and try doing 80 damage per turn, but even then, Nick can switch between Mega Manectrics and heal, because they've got free retreat, and Nick is going to be playing the Rough Seas support stadium card that we saw in the previous game, allowing him to heal 80 per turn. And he's used Hooper. Hooper's ability allows you to draw, to search, and get free EX Pokemon, and he's gone Manectric Shaman, which of course is absolutely the right play here. So he's got an Ultra Ball and a VS Seeker in hand, and he drops down a Shaman to draw 4 cards. So I think this game is very, very heavily in Nick's favour. The problem that John is going to find here is that John is not one-hit KOing anything in Nick's deck. And if he's not one-hit KOing anything in Nick's deck, Nick can just essentially... I mean, he's going to be attacking with Regice and Manectric. Oh, and there's even an escape rope just to switch out a Beautifly if one's there active. So all he needs to do is just sit there, attack with Manectric and Regice, and if one starts getting 2 damaged, you can heal it off 30 per turn with Rough Seas. And unlike the chap we saw in the previous video, Nick is playing 2 copies of Regice, or at least 2 copies of Regice, I should say. I believe it's 2, but I could be mistaken. There goes the escape rope, and that's an excellent play from Nick there, because Miltank has got a retreat cost of, I want to say 2, and Wurmple just dies, like, really quickly. I think Wurmple's got something like 40 HP. It might be slightly higher. I'll look that one up in a second. But it means that it's going to be taken down very quickly by a Manectric. So you really can't afford to have it in the active. Yeah, Miltank does have a retreat cost of 2. So, okay, maybe John can, get some magic going, go ahead and get a Beautifly on turn 2, but what's that really going to accomplish? He's going to be hitting for 80 damage, 100 with a Muscle Band. That ain't doing a huge amount of good. And let's not forget that with him putting a Muscle Band on the Shaman, our Wurmple's got 60 HP, but again, if Nick had hit it with a Muscle Band for 40, it goes to the bench, and then he can KO it with the 20 residual damage from Manectric's first attack anyway. Remember, it does 20 to the active, 20 to 1 on the bench. So there's a Forest of Giant Plants coming down, and that Shaman with a Muscle Band on could end up hurting him, because if he can't get it off the field, Nick can just attach a second energy, play a Lysandre, pull up the Shaman, and Manectric's second attack... Oh, actually, no, it makes no difference. Sorry, I'm being silly. Manectric's second attack does 60 damage, or 120, if it's got a tool attached, but 60 with the lightning weakness would kill it anyway, so no, that Muscle Band had no... Now, we saw there that John used an AZ to pick up the Shaman, and you saw Nick there correct him and remind him that when you pick up a card with AZ, anything attached to that Pokemon gets discarded. So although John got to pick up the Shaman and use its setup ability, he did unfortunately have to discard a DCE and a Muscle Band to use it. Now, I do hope he's going to get a... I'm just thinking, I hope he's going to get a Beautifly this turn and a switch, because he didn't attach the energy to Miltank, which means he's not doing any damage this turn, but Beautifly takes a grass and a double colourless, so he might just have to sacrifice that Miltank in order to get the Beautifly online, and this is another problem John's going to have. Nick also takes 2 energy attachments to get anything going, anything really going, but let's say he's got a Mega Manectric EX. Well, he can just use his attack. Remember, Mega Manectric's attack attaches to basic from your discard to your Pokemon, and Beautifly is going to free hit KO Manectric if you've not got Rough Seas out. So Nick literally can afford in this game, and we see an Ultra Ball coming down. He'll be going for a Silcoon. I can't remember what it's called. How annoying. That'll have to be something else I'll look up as we go here. But the point is that Nick can literally afford in this game to go, well, you know what? I need some energy on the field. I'll stick a Mega Manectric active. It'll get hit for I mean, both Beautifly and Miltank do 80 damage, 100 with a muscle band. So, it is Silcoon. You know, you do 100 to a Pokemon that's got 210 HP. It's got free retreat and then heals with Rough Seas. So, I don't... And obviously, John won round one. I can't say what it was against. Now, against Groudon, this would be amazing. Groudon can't attack you, and you're hitting for weakness. Yay! Against something like... And this is what makes these Manectric decks so gosh darn good. It's a case of, well, what are you going to do? You know, I mean, he can't even one-hit KO Shaman because he's only doing 100 damage. Now, remember in Ancient Origins there was an Ariados released, which poisons both the active Pokemon unless one of them's a grass. So with a Muscle Band on the Beautifly or the Miltank, and an Ariados on the bench, he would be able to do 110 and KO a Shaman, but even that's only the first 4 prizes. He could pull the Hooper into the active and hope that there's no switch on Nick's side of the board, I suppose, is something he could try. And that would get 2 prizes, but even then he's got to take down those Shaman and he's not hitting for enough damage. Now, Hooper EX does have a retreat cost of 2, so there is a chance he could play a Lysandra, he could strand the Hooper active, he could 2-hit KO it if he can find a Muscle Band. And Hooper, remember, cannot... He can't heal with Rough Seas. But even then, that's 2 prizes out of 6. And again, Nick's got 2 Shaman on his side of the field, so John could attempt to go that route, because Shaman also can't heal using Rough Seas. But then you're thinking, well, I don't know exactly how it's going to work. I don't see what he's gaining from this, because he just... I don't know. I'm just trying to think of ways John can win this game, and I really don't think he's going to. The only problem Nick's got is if John puts up a Beautifly. Oh, and there comes down the Lysander to get the KO on the Silcoon. And that's things that Nick can do. And Nick here, he's not even going for the Regice, because Nick has essentially seen, look, I don't... If he gets a Beautifly out, and I can't hit an escape rope, or a Lysandra, and you can see, I think he's got 2 VS Seeker in hand there. So John needs to get those Shaman off his side of the board. It doesn't look like Nick just took a prize from knocking out the Silcoon there. Hopefully someone's going to remind him, because he just did 110 to a Silcoon and got the KO. Nick hasn't taken his prize yet, which is very, very silly. Nick, take your damn prize. But Nick isn't in any way concerned here because he's hitting 110 per turn. Okay, he can't knock out the Beautifly, but the Beautifly's free hitting him if there isn't a Rough Seas out. Or, to be more accurately, with no Muscle Band and 1 Rough Seas heal. And there we go. There goes his prize. He will just get the KO. Now, with a Muscle Band, it would still be a free hit KO, but the more he can heal, and remember he can free retreat and heal. And like most decks, I'm going to go ahead and assume that Nick is probably playing 2 Lysandra and 4 VS Seeker. So he can afford to sit there behind 2 Manectrics, heal with Rough Seas, and Lysandra all 6 of his prizes. But we know he's not going to have to do that for all of them. This turn, he's clearly going to go VS Seeker for the Lysandra for the Shaman. Because, and here we go. Or the Wurmple. Okay, no, I like that play as well. I was going for the extra prizes to win slightly faster, but obviously taking down the Wurmple removes the threat of Beautifly for the time being, and we all know that Beautifly, hopefully, I've been saying it all game, that the Beautifly is the only way that we can actually go ahead and get rid of it's the only way we can actually get rid of it's the only thing John can really do, but I still don't know what he's going to be doing here. I'm worried in that I really don't think there's anything that he can actually do. John, I think this game is a little bit inevitable. Now, he has dropped a Silver Bangle down, and that Silver Bangle would allow him to do 110 to a Shaman, but it's also been rotated. So at this point, John should get a match loss for playing. We've rotated now. On September the 1st, we rotated. Silver Bangle was only released in Plasma Blast. So unfortunately, John, you're playing an illegal card there. This is Standard, not Expanded, Silver Bangle came out in Plasma Blast and has been rotated. Now, the good thing is, if he gets a Beautifly out, Silver Bangle will allow both Beautifly and Miltank to one-hit KO a Shaman for 2 prizes. The bad news is, he's playing Silver Bangle and Silver Bangle's rotated. He should know better. This is a league challenge. This is a sanctioned tournament. And unfortunately, like I said, we have rotated to X and Y on. Silver Bangle was last released in Plasma Blast. What I am slightly concerned about, there are other people there. Nick, you're playing this game. And I don't know if there is a judge there. I know there is a judge at least wandering in and out. There's every chance a judge isn't there at the moment. Can we see his shadow? I don't know. But the point is, other people should be realising that Silver Bangle got rotated out on September the 1st. And this tournament is actually happening on Friday, September the 4th. So, yeah, that Silver Bangle's been rotated, mate. So, yeah. Not ideal. And he scoops, but I'm hoping somebody realised that and told him, and he didn't play the last 3 games with that Silver Bangle. So Nick wins, and as I was saying all game, unfortunately that was not the most exciting game. It was not the most riveting game. It was a very interesting game. You got to see a really good Manectric list played by a Worlds quality player. Remember, Nick went 4-1-2 at Worlds this year, missing out on day 2 of Worlds by a single point. And you got to see an interesting deck in Beautifly. But what that game really showed us more than anything is the power of Manectric. And a lot of people might think, oh, you know, Manectric, it's got some bad matchups. Well, hang on a second, because at the end of the day, we've just seen it should have beaten Groudon round 1, and then we saw it went and beat a Beautifly, which should have been a good counter. I will be back with round 3 very shortly, which involves me. I'm in round 3. And I'm going to be playing against Will Belston's Tyranitar Bats deck. So stay tuned for that in a day or 2. I hope you enjoyed this game. I'll be back with round 3 shortly. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.